9 out of 10 archaeologists who first opened pre-colonial Filipino burial sites reported the same stunned reaction. They had never seen so much gold on a single body. Not a pharaoh, not a Scythian king, a chieftain from an island most modern maps barely label. That dissonance sits at the heart of this story. And the story itself is not about hidden conspiracies or stolen glory. It is about something far more uncomfortable. It is about a system so effective, so persistent, so boringly methodical in its accumulation of wealth that it outpaced civilizations we consider legendary. Then another system, equally methodical, dismantled it. No villains wearing capes, no geniuses with secret plans. 2 grinding machines meeting across centuries. Let's go back, way back. Around the 10th century, the Philippine archipelago was not a nation. To be honest, it was a constellation. Hundreds of barangays dotted the coastlines and river mouths, each one a self-contained political unit. A datu governed each settlement. Trade routes stretched like spider silk across the South China Sea, down to Borneo, over to the Malay Peninsula, and up toward Song Dynasty China. Gold was everywhere, not because Filipinos stumbled onto a lucky vein of ore, because they worked it. Generation after generation refined techniques of sheet gold production, granulation, filigree, and lost wax casting. The Butuan archaeological sites alone yielded gold artifacts dating back to at least the 9th century. Surigao produced finds of staggering intricacy. Cordillera miners extracted ore from deep tunnel systems carved by hand through mountain rock. This was not romance. This was industry. The barangay system rewarded accumulation through lineage. A datu's power was measured in the weight of gold draped on the body at death. The burial was the final audit, the visible proof that a leader's economic network had functioned across an entire lifetime. Every golden sash, every elaborate death mask, every layered necklace of fine beads represented decades of trade negotiations, mining operations, and craft specialization. So when bodies went into the earth or into coffins of hollowed hardwood, they carried gold in quantities that would make Tutankhamun's inner chamber look restrained. The comparison is not hyperbole. Scholars who have studied both traditions note that per-burial gold weight in high-status Filipino interments often rivaled or exceeded Egyptian royal tombs. But here is what separates fairy tale from process. Egypt concentrated gold in singular monumental burials for god-kings. The Philippines distributed gold across thousands of smaller, community-level elite burials spanning hundreds of islands over centuries. The total volume of gold cycling through pre-colonial Filipino funerary practice was enormous, not because one leader hoarded it, but because the system produced it relentlessly. Stop. Think about what that means. A decentralized network of communities with no central emperor, no grand architectural program, no single treasury, collectively buried more gold than one of history's most famous gold-hoarding civilizations. The mechanism was not genius. It was repetition. Mining, smelting, crafting, trading, burying, repeat. For 500 years. The Chinese noticed. Song Dynasty trade records reference Philippine gold. The Laguna copperplate inscription from 900 CE, the oldest known written document found in the Philippines, details a debt settlement involving gold, suggesting a sophisticated financial system already operating at that date. Arab traders wrote about the islands. Indian merchants arrived and exchanged goods. The system kept humming, and the gold kept going into the ground with the dead. Now consider a detail that most narratives skip. Why burial? Why not circulate the gold perpetually? The answer reveals how methodical the system was. Burying gold with the dead removed it from circulation. This created scarcity. Scarcity drove mining. Mining sustained the labor networks. The labor networks reinforced the datu's power. The cycle fed itself like a wheel that never needed an outside push, only steady hands. No single architect designed this. It emerged from centuries of consistent cultural logic applied without interruption. That is the boring truth. The most effective economic systems are not invented in a flash of brilliance. They crystallize slowly from repeated habit. By the time the Spanish arrived in 1521, this wheel had been turning for over half a millennium. Ferdinand Magellan landed in Cebu and encountered Raja Humabon, whose wife was described by Antonio Pigafetta, the expedition's chronicler, as covered in gold. Her arms weighted with bracelets, gold chains cascading across her body. Pigafetta's descriptions read like someone encountering a walking treasury. He was. The Spanish did not immediately understand what they were looking at. They saw gold and wanted it, which is simple enough. But they did not grasp the depth of the system producing it. They assumed it was surface wealth. A few mines, a few lucky rivers. They were wrong, and that misunderstanding shaped everything that followed. Let's say, pause here, because the next phase of this story hinges on a single bureaucratic habit that the Spanish crown perfected over centuries of colonial expansion. Without understanding that habit, nothing else makes sense. Spain ran its empire on paperwork, reports, inventories, tax ledgers, shipping manifests. Every colony fed data back to Seville and later to Madrid. When administrators in the Philippines began cataloging what they found, the records revealed a pattern. Gold appeared in burial sites across virtually every major island. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. The sheer geographic spread shocked administrators accustomed to centralized deposits. They did what bureaucracies do. They created processes. Extraction became policy. The Spanish colonial government did not raid tombs in a single dramatic heist. That is the cinematic version. The reality was slower and more devastating. Over decades and then centuries, colonial authorities and the church systematically discouraged indigenous burial practices. They introduced Christian funeral rites that did not include gold interment. They taxed gold production. They redirected mining labor toward colonial needs. They confiscated artifacts deemed pagan, and they melted things down. Gold artifacts of extraordinary craftsmanship, death masks with delicate features, chest ornaments depicting serpents and crocodiles, ear ornaments thin as paper yet rigid as armor, went into crucibles. The metal was recast into bars, coins, and church fixtures. The artistry vanished. The gold remained, but stripped of every cultural fingerprint. This was not a conspiracy. It was standard operating procedure. Spain did this across the Americas too. Aztec goldwork, Inca figurines, Muisca offerings, all fed the same furnace. The Philippine case differs only in how thoroughly it has been forgotten. Why forgotten? Because the system that destroyed the evidence was also systematic about that. Colonial education in the Philippines, lasting over 3 centuries under Spain and then several decades under the United States, built curricula that started Philippine history at 1521. Everything before Magellan's arrival existed in a haze. Pre-colonial Filipinos appeared in textbooks as primitive, scattered, pre-literate peoples waiting to be civilized. The gold contradicted that narrative so sharply that it could not be incorporated. So it was omitted. Not actively suppressed in most cases. Simply never taught. Never mentioned. The absence did its own work, eroding cultural memory more effectively than any censorship board could. Quiet erosion, that was the method. Modern archaeology has started to reverse this. The collections at the Ayala Museum in Makati include pre-colonial gold pieces that survived by accident, buried too deep, located in too remote a site, or hidden by families who understood what was coming. The Central Bank of the Philippines holds a gold collection that, piece by piece, has been reassembled from scattered finds over the past several decades. Each piece tells a story. The Surigao treasure, discovered in the 1980s, contained gold items weighing several kilograms in total. Among them were elaborate belts, chains, and what appear to be ritual garments made entirely of interlocking gold plates. The craftsmanship suggests techniques passed down through guilds or family lineages over many generations. Look at the metalwork closely. The granulation, tiny gold spheres fused onto a surface without melting the base, matches techniques found in Etruscan jewelry and Indian goldsmithing. This does not mean Filipinos copied anyone. It means they participated in a vast maritime exchange of knowledge that spanned the ancient world. They were nodes in a network, not isolated villages. The Manunggul jar from Palawan, though ceramic rather than gold, reinforces the picture. Its lid depicts two souls being ferried to the afterlife in a boat, a burial concept reflecting deep spiritual sophistication. The gold placed alongside such vessels was not decoration. It was theology made tangible. Now here is where the numbers become quietly staggering, even with conservative estimates. Across the archipelago over hundreds of years, thousands of high-status burials took place. Each one contained gold, the cumulative total of gold that went into Filipino graves before Spanish contact likely runs into the tens of thousands of kilograms. Compare that to Tutankhamun's tomb, which held roughly 110 kilograms of gold. One tomb versus an entire civilization's ongoing practice. Incidentally, the comparison is almost unfair. Egypt gets the fame because it built monuments that survived. The pyramids are visible from space. Filipino burial sites were wooden coffins in caves, ledges, and riverbanks, materials that rot, collapse, and disappear. The gold inside them was the only durable record, and the colonial period systematically destroyed most of it. What remains is a fraction. Scholars who study the surviving pieces estimate that the overwhelming majority of pre-colonial Philippine gold was lost to colonial melting operations. The gold that lined Spanish galleons, funded European wars, and gilded cathedral altars across the Catholic world contained Philippine atoms. You cannot trace a melted ingot back to the death mask it once was. The transformation is permanent, and yet small recoveries continue. Farmers digging foundations find pieces. Construction crews hit burial layers. Each discovery triggers a brief flurry of academic excitement, a round of museum acquisitions, and then silence. The system of recovery is as fragmented as the system of destruction was unified. That asymmetry matters. It explains why the story stays marginal. Destruction was centralized, efficient, and well-funded. Recovery is decentralized, underfunded, and dependent on chance. The same structural logic that made the Barangay gold system so productive, its distributed, repetitive nature, now makes its rediscovery painfully slow. There is a kind of symmetry in that. The patience required to rebuild the picture mirrors the patience that built the original culture. To be honest, one dig at a time, one fragment at a time, one careful attribution at a time. Modern Filipino scholars and artists have started drawing on this heritage with increasing confidence. The realization that their ancestors operated a gold economy rivaling ancient Egypt's is not a matter of nationalist pride, though pride follows naturally. It is a matter of correcting a factual record that was distorted by colonial processes, too mundane to qualify as villainy and too thorough to dismiss as accident. The Spanish did not hate Filipino gold culture. They processed it. They ran it through a bureaucratic machine designed to convert indigenous wealth into imperial revenue. The machine worked. It worked so well that it erased the source material almost completely. What survives, in museum cases, in academic papers, in the muscle memory of indigenous communities who still practice traditional metalwork, is a whisper from a world that once roared with golden weight. No grand revelation hides at the end of this story. No secret archive waits to be unsealed. The truth is plain and has been available for decades to anyone willing to read the archaeological literature. pre-colonial Filipinos produced, circulated, and buried gold in quantities that challenge almost every assumption casual observers hold about ancient Southeast Asia. They did it without pyramids, without a centralized state, without written propaganda carved into temple walls. Think about it. They did it through a system, quiet, distributed, generational. Mining families taught their children. Craftspeople refined techniques over lifetimes. Datas accumulated and then surrendered their wealth to the earth, fueling the next cycle. And then a different system arrived on wooden ships with crosses on the sails. And it did what systems do when they encounter resources. It processed them. The gold is gone, most of it, scattered into coins and bars and molten rivers of metal that cooled into shapes bearing no memory of the hands that first worked them. But the ground still holds fragments, and every fragment remembers.